And we are back with the Chosen Journey, Big Money Grip, Steve Karsay, and we're going to talk about Steve's favorite topics today. Or one of them is closers and saves. Welcome back, Steve.
Hey, good to be back with you. Looking forward to the episode to talk about finishing games here.
So we really have a debate over the last few years in baseball with the hold coming into play. It used to not really be a stat or one that we really cared about much, and it was always about the saves. That's it. Top relief pitcher, how many saves you got? Don't talk to me about anything else. It's the same thing. Back in archaic days when people used to win Cy Youngs because of the amount of games they won. You had 22 wins, another guy had 15. You had a 4 ERA and he had a 3.2 ERA, and yet you had the most amount of wins. Now I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit, but that's certainly how it seemed. It seems baseball has gotten a little smarter about it, but there's still something about that closer, something sexy about having that person that you're going to bring in the ninth. They're going to get 3 strikeouts, get the save, lock it down. True or false?
It's true. I agree with that. I think it's a comfort level for a manager to have a certain individual that he can trust and count on coming in at the end of the game. I mean, obviously, you talk about your Trevor Hoffmans, your Mariano Rivera's, your Goose Gossages, Kenley Jansen, Kimbrel when he was Kimbrel. Just guys like that, and that that it's locked down. You got your new age closers like Clase now, and some of these guys, Hader, obviously. Those guys go through bad stretches, right, and have a couple, you know, stretches of a week or two where they might not throw the ball great for whatever reason. But at the end of the day, over 162, when you can count on a guy 40 times to get you 40 wins or close out the game 40 times, you're in a good spot.
So I have this generalization of how I see closers over the course, at least of my life, since I've been watching and covering baseball. And to me, a closer for the longest time was a failed starter. That's how you became a closer de facto. It's like, what do you call a failed rock star? A country singer. That's just what you gravitate to. And for people that don't believe me in that, go Google on YouTube Mariano Rivera starting pitcher and go watch Rivera. As you all know, greatest closer of all time. I don't think any of us will argue that. But the man was a starting pitcher when it all came to it. He had a head of hair, actually. So it's quite funny to watch a young Rivera. And then they said, Mariano, you know what? Let's lose the hair. Let's lose all the pitches except for one. You're gonna be a one pitcher guy, and that's all you need. And you're gonna be closing. Um, Trevor Hoffman was a shortstop, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Got picked up at the expansion draft, got traded, and became the second best closer of all time. The guy who I always saw the evolution changing the mindset was Chad Cordero. That was a groomed closer in college and then transferred it to the majors. Looking at this day and age, and you having coached in the minors and having coached in the majors, where do closers come from now? Is it a combination of failed starters becoming relievers, or are they more groomed now in college? What's the pipeline, Steve?
In my opinion, the pipeline is stuff. Uh, what kind of stuff does a guy have? Does he throw hard? Does he have a wipeout off speed pitch like a Devin Williams with his changeup, or a slider that a closer might have that's really untouchable? So it becomes stuff. Like as a starter, the tendency is to think that you need 3 pitches to compete. Maybe 20 years ago because they let starters go a lot longer. Now, maybe guys don't need 3 pitches because they're only going 5 or 6 innings, so you can get through the lineup twice with 2 pitches. But that's another conversation for another day. But on the reliever side of it, you find a guy who has stuff, and then you take the mental side of it of guys who can handle that pressure packed situations, walking into the ninth inning, knowing that there's not anybody behind him to save his tail if he gets in a jam, and just is mentally tough when it comes down to it.
And this list, like if we had sat at the beginning of the year, you and I, and we mapped out the top 10 saves closers in baseball, and we did it at the beginning of the year, and then we looked at the list today, I don't think we would have come even close to matching that top 10.
Yeah, it would have been tough. I mean, there's so many guys that are, rolled in and rolled out, and there's a circular thing that goes on when a guy's pitching well. It's on a team, that manager's going to probably use that guy a little bit better, and then he'll fall out of favor. And it's a tough way to live when you're rotating guys at the back end and not having a constant come in the ninth inning.
Those fantasy baseball players out there that absolutely adore that sport, you are made or break usually with the closers. And I remember there was a game, and it was actually the Royals were in Toronto out of all places. I was watching it on TV, and they bring this guy, Joaquim Soria. And I know that the Royals closer at the time wasn't pitching very well. And he's blown everybody away. He gets one strikeout, two strikeout, and you have your finger on the add button and you're just ready to drop one guy and add him. Like, you get to save. I'm taking him right now. The second that pitch left his hand, it hit the catcher's mitt. I pressed add. I beat a guy by 3 seconds. Soria won me the championship that year. And man, he went on to have a great career. But for every Joaquim Soria, there's a guy who comes in, can have one or two great outings, and then never heard from again. This list today, when we look at 2022 and how we finished off, and we'll look at a few of them and their stories, whether we expected them to start the year, not, do we think they're going to be in the list? It's quite an interesting tale for each. And some of their stories blew me away. So without further ado, and I have the advantage of having the list in front of me, but Steve has a photographic memory. So we'll see how good Steve is. Number one on the list, top saves for the year was
Josh Hader.
Emmanuel Clase ended up finishing with 42.
Mm.
And the list will just get worse and worse, Steve, as we go along. So Clase, I mean, watching him out there, looking at his numbers overall, 9.5 Ks per nine. So he's not Edwin Diaz is 17.1, but 0.73 whip and 1.36 ERA. I think any team will take this guy as their closer, hands down, right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was in shock just knowing of him when Texas traded him for Corey Kluber to the Indians. I think the Indians did their homework and they got a real steal in that. Now, Kluber is a master and he's a quality starter, but he was at the end of his career. He had some injuries. He's got a couple Cy Youngs under his belt, right? But at the end of the day, when you're trading a guy who has an arm like Clase to be on the back end for Corey Kluber, which you don't know what you're gonna get. And I think after that trade, I think the Rangers had him for 1 year, and he only pitched, I think, 16 or 17 innings for that 1 year, and then he went on and moved on to a different team. So kudos to the Cleveland Indians for making that trade and finding their closer for the future.
He is so good. But that being said, when John Rocker first came up with the Braves, he was so good. So, not saying we're going Rocker style here, but all it takes is one off-field incident. All it could take is one arm injury, and you just never know. But man, Cleveland and the Guardians and the fans have to be thrilled with him. He's everything you possibly want in a closer. Number one, I'll give it to him. And he got the most amount of saves, maybe not the best numbers, depending on what your measure of numbers are.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just that consistent in every category. He's not necessarily the top guy otherwise, but he's close. Not a lot of blown saves with 4, not the highest K per 9, but he's still paying 1 per inning. Low batting average against. I'm good with him. The guy number 2 on the list gives me hard palpitations. He is one headache to another. The teams say they love him, are very happy with him. Both of his current team and former team just got bounced, Mr. Kenley Jansen. And he was an outfielder, if I'm not mistaken, originally.
I thought he was a catcher.
Maybe it was a catcher. I know he was a hitter for sure. I'm trying to picture him Carlos Delgado-ish behind the plate there, but he was not originally even a pitcher. And he had this stuff. And you look at the final numbers, Steve. I mean, 3.38 ERA, which seems high, but it's very good for a pitcher overall, but not for a closer when they're in the ones. Finished with 41 saves, blew 7, so he's high up on that list. Still K'ing 12 per 9, 1.05 whip, why do I hate this guy so much? Why do I not want him on my team? But teams are still lining up to grab him. So what is about Kenley Jansen that is so great but so frustrating?
Probably just the track record, right? I mean, you know what you're going to get with Kenley Jansen. He's getting a little bit older, but you got experience. You got a guy who has a slow heartbeat. You got a guy who can handle the pressure, and you got a guy who knows what he wants to do on the mound and knows who he is. So when you have those qualities in a guy, and you have an idea of what you're going to get when the bullpen door opens up and he walks out on the mound, it's a comforting feeling for a manager.
Well, he's come back, and I think the Dodgers could have used him after Kimbrel getting bounced out, and Kimbrel still was up there at the end of the day, but not the numbers overall. And Clase is on that Braves team. Maybe it's a different story. A guy number 3 that the Jays and the A's would love to do a redo on the White Sox, Mr.
Oh,
Liam
that's right.
Hendriks,
That's right.
the pride of
Okay.
Australia. He's like 7'5", and he finished with 37 saves, 2.81 ERA, and 13.3 K per nine, 1.04 WHIP. It was when they acquired Kimbrel at the time. There was talk who's gonna be the closer. You know what? Something about Liam, I don't know. He loves maybe the thick pizza in Chicago, but since he got there, he's just steady. He's just very steady, and they're very happy with him, as they should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, when the doors open in the ninth inning and Liam Hendriks takes the mound, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a guy who understands the situation. You're going to get a guy 13.5 strikeouts per nine. You can get your strikeout when needed, and the consistency has been there year after year. So again, comfort level for a manager. Those are the guys you want pitching for you in the ninth inning.
Another failed starter, guy who bounced around, seen as a journeyman, maybe a middle reliever, and here he is now a top closer. And Kenley Jansen, a former catcher, apparently. Number 4, Jordan Romano. The Jays also looking for a closer, looking under looked under the CN Tower, seeing if they could find one. And here's underneath their nose the whole time, another guy who they thought was going to be a starter. And you know what? At the end of the year, I think they're very happy with him. I think they got to be, if they can get these numbers year after year with him, I think they're taking it in a second.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you've got to see him obviously a lot more than I have. I didn't get to see him much, but the stuff is there, right? I mean, he's a quality reliever with stuff,
Yeah.
and is a competitor from what I've seen when I've watched him pitch. And he attacks the zone and he goes after guys. And at the end of the day, if you get a guy who can, you put on the mound in the ninth inning and you're very comfortable with that, that's your guy, and you live and die with what he's going to do on that particular day.
And looking at these numbers, Steve, like, I don't know how much the analytics goes into it from a coaching or owner perspective, but Liam blows 4 saves, Romano 6. Some guys only blew 3. An extra game or two over 162, is that really substantial when you look at the overall body of work, when you look at their numbers, their Ks, how many hits they're giving up? How much are we relying on blown saves as a category?
I think it depends on a lot of factors. I think when is the blown save a blown save? Is it in a key game at the end of the season, or is it a game in the beginning of the year where maybe he's just not on early and trying to still settle in and find himself? I mean, it's I think where you worry more is where you have the inconsistency of the saves. Is if you blow 3 or 4 in a row and then you reel off 5 in a row and then you blow 2 in a row. So I think that's where the worrisome part comes in. But if you're consistent and you're blowing 1 for every 10 saves, I think any manager would take that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot different situation when you're coming into the ninth, 0 outs, clean inning, versus coming in with 1 out and bases loaded on a consistent basis. Like, the odds are really stacked against you at that point, and you're almost in no man's land. How much that gets factored in?
I think it gets factored in quite a bit. I mean, inherited runners becomes a factor with closers or relievers in general. And then I think we talked about this many times. before, whether it's been on camera, off camera, is does that guy come in with a 1 run lead in the ninth inning, or is he coming in with a 3 run lead all the time in the ninth inning? There's a big difference pitching with a 1 run lead and getting 3 outs than there is with a 3 run lead and having to getting 3 outs. So I think that would be something that teams track and have an understanding of with the guy that they are going to trust in the ninth inning, and a guy that they're going to give a multi-year uh, dollar value to.
Guy at number 5, who I have a very hard time assessing, and I had to take 3 takes. We've talked about this one off camera for sure during the year, and I had to double check. Is there another guy with his name that I'm not aware of? This can't be the same guy, but it is on Colorado, Daniel Bard. Like, we have written him off long ago. Has this guy found the fountain of youth? Like, what the heck is going on? And it's in Colorado, and he's got some of the best numbers we've ever seen from a Colorado closer. What is up with Bard?
Yeah, like that one is as solid as it is, right? Not taking anything away from what he has done, but there's no pressure in Colorado. You go out and you pitch, you blow a save, okay. You don't blow a save, you get the win. It doesn't really become national lose. It doesn't become one of those things where they're always in the hunt. They're a team that is a good team some years, some teams not so good, and it just doesn't get the fanfare whether you blow a save in Colorado or if you're reeling them off. I mean, people will notice as you're pitching well and doing what he has done, and it's a great story. And kudos to him for being able to come back and do what he's done. But at the end of the day, you put Daniel Bard in New York or LA, is he the same guy? I
Boston.
can't answer that. Or Boston, I can't answer that. I don't know that answer until he has been there, done that. There's some guys who can do it, and there's some guys can't. There's some guys are more comfortable pitching in Colorado in those type of situations as a save, as opposed to national TV high leverage situations. And I don't know Daniel at all. He might be very good in those situations, but he's never had an opportunity to do that, and we will never know.
What I'll say this much about Daniel Bard, not knowing him as well, is you got a physical component and you got a mental component. I know through the media he's faced both, and the man has obviously worked his butt off to get back to where he is because he got written off long ago and he had to have done something right. And imagine the whole year he blew 3 saves. That's it. So
Yeah.
yeah, kudos to him. Another guy that I had to do a check on because the Astros steamrolling along, and you're thinking to yourselves, they don't have Diaz, they don't have Clase. It's not Elvis Presley, but it's Ryan Presley. Another guy that you just don't assume as a quote unquote closer. Who the heck is this guy? Some middle reliever, but you know what? He got an ERA of almost 3, but he only blew 4 saves all year for them, 12.1 K per 9. I think just he's quietly been a steady rock back there, and good for them to uncover him and give him the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Houston Astros do a really good job of filtering guys in like Presley, starting them in a middle relief to set up roll and then filter him back to the back end of the bullpen, knowing that once he's pitched in middle relief, that he's able and capable of doing that. Wipe out breaking ball, like we talked about. When you have that and you have stuff, you're going to be more successful than not. Really good fastball, can locate. So seems like seems like a mentally tough guy, and just has been healthy. So for him to step in and do that, and for the Astros to trust him during these really good years and these runs that they've had is impressive.
And not the worst thing in the world to not have the sexiest name closers out there that get all the notoriety and walkout music and all that. They're just a bunch of hardworking relievers, bring their lunch pails and quietly just get the results. And that there's value in that. The last big name on the list was the aforementioned Edwin Diaz. And the one number that sticks out with him, 17.1 K per 9. Are you joking me?
Yeah, it's impressive. I mean,
wow.
it's one of those things where you look at how we performed the year before that, and then what adjustments he made in the off season to come out and have the year like he had this year. He's been phenomenal, and he's a guy, I would have to go look it up, but he's a guy who's getting 4-out saves, 5-out saves. He's pitched 2 innings multiple times. Um, so if he can keep that consistency, and he's a free agent this year, so teams are going to have to do their homework on him and see what value he brings dollar wise, if they can do that for their payroll, and is he going to have the type of years, he had this year, during a contract that he will get.
He was in his younger years on the Mariners, he was the Class A at the time. Just so we all understand that the Mariners trading Diaz to the Mets would be the same thing as the Guardians trading Class A at this point. That's how good Diaz was. The only reason he got traded was they attached that horrible Cano contract, which the Mets agreed to accept. They're saying we're getting the top closer in baseball, no question about it. And then there was something just did not click there for whatever reason. Maybe he all of a sudden just, had to go to a couple pubs maybe, or enjoyed the pizza at night too much. I don't know. But it was an adjustment for him. But they are absolutely loving him out there. And he's clearly taken to New York and, built up a great rapport there. He wasn't the quote unquote top closer in baseball saves wise, but overall numbers wise, this man is just scary. 1.301 ERA. Like, you're not hitting him. That's it. Like, watching his stuff, Steve, it's almost like you got to start your swing the second he releases the ball. Like, that's how hard he throws.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's a real minimal time that a hitter gets to decide whether he wants to swing or not. And guys who throw harder and have the type of stuff that he has, it just becomes a lot harder for the hitter to be in the box. But it's a perfect example of going from a place like Seattle, where not a lot of people watch you, to a place like New York, and having to get comfortable because you're on center stage all the time, playing on the East Coast and playing in a big market. So maybe that was it. I don't know. But at the end of the day, he's turned himself into one of the best closers in baseball, and is now a free agent. And we'll see what transpires with some of these teams who need a back end closer.
And we got a few guys on the list, which we won't really touch upon, but the guys that got 20 in the save category had kept their whips around around 1. So they did all right for themselves. Seawald on the Mariners, for example, Scott on the Marlins. The next guy on the list, though, it's funny as we're finishing this topic off, because we're not going to talk about all the closers in baseball. The one that kind of stuck out to me is like those kind of iffy closers was Soto on the Tigers. So you got Gregory Soto, and he finished with 32 saves, which is impressive in its own right. But 30 saves on that team. But then you look at the rest of the numbers: 211 record, 3.28 ERA, and a 1.38 WHIP. I don't think that's exciting anybody at that point, but on a rebuilding team, I think it's just good enough.
Well, you got stuff, right? He's a left-hander, throws super hard. Sometimes a product of that is the product of your team, right? I mean, I don't know how many of those are unearned runs and some of the blown saves and all of that kind of stuff. So it's one of those things where sometimes you get a guy like him out and put him in a different situation, he blossoms a little bit more. The one guy you didn't touch on that I think is flying under the radar that should probably be a little bit more noticed, and probably will be the closer in Atlanta if Kenley Jansen doesn't come back, is Iglesias, who was with the Angels, and then Angels were able to trade him to Atlanta. So Atlanta made a really nice move with that contract. They still have him under control for 3 years, and if they don't bring Kenley back, then this guy's going to step right in and do really well.
Simply because he didn't get the numbers as a quote unquote closer. We're talking about the top closers, but I just actually read a couple articles on that, and I was thinking about it myself. I'm letting Jansen go the second I can. Take that money, put it somewhere else. Iglesias, his numbers were outstanding, but there was also saying, look, we have a luxury that we can put him in the 7th, put him in the 8th, and keep Jansen in the 9th. But I kind of boggled my mind how more teams didn't step up to grab Iglesias as well. I didn't even know he was available. Why not grab him? Like, think how much of a luxury it is to have him on your squad. So they got to be laughing right now. I agree with you that I think he's a head and shoulders above a lot of these guys. If he got a full year of closing under his belt on that team, he'd be right in the top 5. guaranteed.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I think he did a tremendous job in Anaheim. Uh, and then I think he pitched well in Atlanta. It's just the opportunity is going to have to present itself. He's under contract. He, signed a 4-year deal with the Angels. He was in the first year of his deal, and then they traded him. So the team that got him wanted to take on that type of contract, knowing that he was going to be a future closer if if they needed him, or somewhere in the middle or in between. Got great value out of that.
It's like those articles I was reading. Blue Jays fans excited that potential of Otani trade. There's about 29 other teams that are excited about an Otani trade. Like Otani watches him go to the Braves, he's probably thinking, "Take me with you," because that's going to be a firestorm soon, especially with the team being sold or rumored to be sold, and Otani signing a 1-year deal, and just saying now on Japanese media TV that he found the end of the year very unsatisfying. And man, he becomes a free agent. I think every team is lining up with the bank book and blank checks and whatever you want, Shohei, come over.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you can have a guy like that who puts up numbers on both sides, the pitching side and the hitting side, he's valuable to any team that is in a market to win. Obviously, you would probably like to stay out west, maybe the Dodgers, the Yankees. Those are the two teams that obviously have biggest bang for the buck with their checkbook and could afford him no problem. But at the end of the day, what is that number going to look like?
There's that song by the Pet Shop Boys, "Go West, life is peaceful there. Go West." And the Padres are just accumulating everybody, and you would think what would it look like if Tatis was on that lineup as well, but maybe they also acquired Soto knowing that Tatis was likely not going to come back this year. We can play that game all day long. If we're going to talk about the West and we're talking about rumors, the one I'll throw out there, Otani's going to leave and stay out West. The only team I could see is the Giants. I think they have the money. I think they needed that star power. When they brought Barry Bonds on back in the day and gave him that massive contract, I think they built the team around Otani and whatever he wants. Posey's retired. Let's do it. I just can't see the Padres paying for him. Dodgers, I know they have unlimited money, but how much of a cap can you go beyond? And I don't know. Sometimes I see life in San Francisco for Shohei Otani, so that's my prediction. Or the Yankees. I can only see one of those two teams. So we'll see if I'm right or wrong. When we're finishing up with closers, the two I wanted to sum up today was close to home for you because we got the Brew Crew going, and hater for Rogers, and I don't think Rogers is gonna be back next year. I
No,
think free agent, and I don't think he's getting signed. Hader will be back. I think he still has one more year on his deal,
he
and
does.
and at the end of the day, I don't know where Rogers is gonna go, but people I think are forgetting in that talk that there was a ready-made closer before Hader even left.
Oh, absolutely, Devin Williams, right? I
Yeah.
mean, he was the next heir apparent to when Josh was going to leave. You're always grooming him to be the closer. He has the stuff. He has the mindset, and he's very capable of handling that situation. He's a tough kid from St. Louis. Has an understanding of what he needs to do. But yeah, I mean, it's just a luxury to have, right? When you can trade the best or one of the best closers and get some guys in return and then fill a guy in and not lose a step in the ninth inning. Where I think they got hurt this past year is they got hurt losing the step in the bridge getting to the ninth inning. Once you subtracted out of that bullpen the Josh Hader and added a couple other guys in there that just didn't produce to the potential that the thought they were going to do when the trade was made.
I think if that trade's not made, Hader stays on the team. I think you're actually seeing probably that they would have come a lot closer if not actually making the playoffs because they were in it all year. But next year, I think Williams will be on this list. That's what I'm going to predict. I think definitely top 10 closer at the very least. Can you see that happening very easily?
I'll put him in the top 5
Top
as
5.
a closer for next year. Yeah, I think you're gonna have the guys that I would predict next year, and we're so far away from that, but would be the Hader, the Williams. I'm gonna say the Iglesias. That's just 3 off the top of my head that I can think of that that you have on your list that I think are going to be where they need to be. I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, Edwin Diaz, obviously, depending what team he goes to, and I'm sure he's going to pick a team that has an opportunity to go to the playoffs and win. So I think he'll be high on that list as well.
I think Bednar will be around that Soto category, middle of the road, comfortable. Because again, the kind of team that they're playing on with the less pressure. The last guy you kind of touched upon, and we'll bring him up actually, is on St. Louis, Halsey. And he had a nice end of the year there for them. And you think he's got the wherewithal to be able to stay on for a few years as a top closer?
Absolutely, he's got the stuff. Like, and he sometimes loses the zone and doesn't throw enough strikes, but he has that wipeout breaking ball. He throws 99 to 103. But even though sometimes you have the stuff, it doesn't work out. But for him, I think it does. There's another guy on that team that they tried in that closing role that it didn't work out for because, again, just doesn't throw enough strikes. And that's Hicks, right? He throws 105 sometimes with crazy movement with a two-seamer. But when you're putting guys on base with walks and you give up one hit or here or there, and you've already put a couple guys on base, that one-run lead evaporates very quick. So it's Jordan Hicks is who I'm thinking about on stat. But again, getting back to Helsley, I think he's in that conversation of being one of the best during a course of 162 games for sure.
I think we'll create our own set of awards, Steve, at the end of every year. Well, we'll have the Joaquin Soria Award, where the guy comes kind of out of nowhere, has his stuff, and puts it together and builds a nice season and career. And then there'll be the John Rocker Award, where they come out fast and they implode. So I think a few candidates this year for the Joaquin Soria Award, and we'll assess that come, I think, closer to November, December. Thank you for sharing your insights. People understand you've been there, you were a starter, got to do the closing, got to be in setting in the setup role. You've got to eat and breathe, sleep this stuff, and then after the career was done playing wise, got to coach these guys firsthand and see how they were, and you got to, as you know, the outfits in the back here, you got to enjoy the time in the bullpen with Hader and Gang and Williams, and talking baseball, talking mentalities, and it's a much different life in the bullpen than on the clubhouse chair, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you get to learn a lot about a guy and who he is and how he thinks and what his personality is to be able to pitch in those type of situations. A personality trait is a huge deal for me when you're talking about guys who pitch in the high leverage situations or the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. There are guys who can do it, and there are guys who just don't have the personality to do that. There's guys who need to be up by 4 runs or down by 4 runs to go in and pitch and be successful. If you put them in a 1-run game, sometimes they just kind of implode because the pressure is a little bit too much for them. So, having the experience, being able to pick guys' brains, being able to learn who they are, learn their personalities, and, using my experience to see if they are able to handle that situation and pitch at the back end of the games was a lot of fun to be around and do that. It's part I miss about baseball and being involved in the major league portion of it. But at the end of the day, I still keep in touch with a lot of these guys and really get to talk baseball with them and see how they're doing. So, back in bullpen is not the easiest thing. A lot of people out there say, how hard can it be to pitch 1 inning? But sometimes that 1 inning is a lot more stressful than the first 5 or 6 that the starter goes through.
When there are 50,000 people in the stadium yelling at you, watching your every movement, it can build a little bit of pressure, I would say. And we miss you tremendously, Fernando Rodney, when you used to trot out of the Tigers pen. And you remember a good old Scott Proctor?
Scott Proctor, what a couple of years he had.
He had a rubber arm. I think he pitched like 90 games for them. But I'll always remember about him. He's about to get called into the game. He goes to the side, grabs a Red Bull, downs it, tosses it, and runs right out there. And there's just bullpens, closers, you got to be crazy to do that. You got to have
It's a
personality.
different mentality. Definitely a different mentality.
Love it. Love it. Well, Steve, thank you as always sharing your insight on the chosen journey. And by all means, we want the fans to interact. Hit that subscribe button. Ask your questions for Steve. Anything on baseball, life, keep it fairly clean. And you never know, your questions may get answered. So we love the interaction. Appreciate everybody watching. And we'll see you back soon on the chosen journey.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Good to see you, Jonathan, and look forward to next time.